the first thing we're going to have to do with the K-8 is we have to get, internally, we have to get together with the instructional side to determine what that is, to be able to tell the architects and engineers what it is we need to design to. If the study showed, or the risk committee didn't define what K-8 is, what it represents, how it's going to, what it's the model is going to be. We need to do that first with our instructional peers and then give that information to the team that's going to be doing the evaluation.
And that would also deem the size of the facility.
Ultimately, it'll determine the size.
Okay.
So the feasibility study in no portion will ever take
I'm
away
being
your
replaced.
ability to make a...
Oh, wow.
You're being
Everybody's
blank.
lining up.
Everybody's getting in there.
There's another microphone over there.
Hey, Bill.
So the size of the facility is really a difficult question because there are so many options.
Right,
It could be any size that the board or staff.
right.
It could be any size that the board or staff wanted. We can't have an architect look at all the ranges. We really have to tell them what size middle school we're talking about and what would make sense. The risk committee assumed replacement of the East Middle population, which is based on 250 students in each of the 3 grades, which is fed by, I believe it was five or six elementary schools. The typical K-8 is basically one school population. A student starts in kindergarten and progresses all the way through 8. So if there's 80 kindergartners, you will have 80 6th graders, 80 7th graders, 80 8th graders. That would be significantly smaller than East Middle, and we would have to find seats for 500 or so middle school students in other middle schools, which would be a major redistricting. If that's what you're talking about, I think there would probably need to be some direction, soon to give the architect that. Right now, we would give them what the risk committee, what the risk report said the size would be. So we can certainly ask them to look at a range, but I think we would have to define parameters to give them. You can't just, we couldn't just say look at all range of options because there's, again, so many different range of options you could.
Can I ask that we defer to the staff on that? And I'm sure you guys can come up with a number that makes sense for our needs?
I don't even know if I necessarily support having kindergartners and 8th graders in the same building. There were discussions before of having 2 separate buildings, basically a campus. Ms. Herbert?
Well, if one of the things that it comes down to is going to Friendship Valley, you've already got an elementary school there, K through 1, 2, and then do then 3 to 8. So that would be another option, and then it wouldn't have to be as large. That would be an option. So.
Yes. So one other thing, I mean, could we possibly, we're going to utilize staff, of course, but could we possibly have a discussion as a board, possibly a work session, a small work session, to discuss all the things that we would like to see in the feasibility study? Would there be an agreement amongst the board for something like that?
I just worry that what information that are we going to have that this, I just feel that the director of elementary school and middle school are going to know way better than we are what the best needs are for that replacement facility.
No, I can support that too, but I think that, we've already had discussion of different opinions and those things. We ultimately make that decision.
Well, then I would ask us to do it differently. I would ask the staff to give us their recommendation. I don't think it makes any sense for us to sit up here and throw out whatever it is we're thinking. I mean, I think it makes more sense to have the staff, who are the experts, make a recommendation to us.
Okay.
Just one last time, I want to reiterate that the feasibility study does not tie your hands for what project that you ultimately put in the master plan and the CIP if that's the direction you end up going. So I'm not hearing anything that would suggest that any of you would be looking for a bigger school or K through 8 project than the size that the risk looked at. And so if you decided from the feasibility study, you know it's feasible to build a school of X size at this site or that site, but you're not comfortable as a policy decision with a K through 8 or the elementary portion of that being a certain size, then you can define that as a capital project and also direct through Dr. Lager's staff to begin the requisite redistricting study at that time, so that as a project, as an eventual facility comes online, the redistricting is concurrent with it. So you're not, I guess the point we're trying to make is this is a step in the process that gives you valuable, necessary information, but it doesn't tie you down to, to the results of the study, literally, to the results of the study.
Okay. So,
Thank you.
I also support Dr. Lockert's, recommendations. I think it's been long enough, it's long before I was even a board member, this was a discussion on school closure. And, there have been many committees that have come back with the same conclusion. I think it's time that we stop asking the experts, that they've all come back with the same conclusion. We can't keep asking the question to expect a different result. And I'm not blaming this board or the last board or anything. It's just that's what local government is continuously asking us to do, is keep asking the question. We've gotten the answer 3 times. So I completely support of ending this conversation on school closure, for the next 5 years until our projections show that we might possibly need to do something in one direction or another. With the changes that we've made, it does give us the ability to redistrict, to accommodate changes, which I think is extremely important. So with that being said, is there any other discussion or comments from the board? Dr. Lockert.
Sure. Just as a reminder, I laid out that the idea would be to come back by April with that. I want to just remind the board, we are to take some action on this at our November board meeting, the recommendations anyway, and I just want to remind us that I can look to Ray and John for their expertise, but I believe we need to stick to that time frame so that we don't, so that we can meet that goal, right?
The April projection would be based upon an action no later than the November board meeting on the feasibility scope study.
So the feasibility study, we'd be expecting it back in April.
If you approve it no later than your November business meeting, yes, it would be out for bid soon thereafter, reviewed, and the study would be in your hand in the April 2019 timeline.
Okay. The other thing I'd like to add is, with your recommendations, I think it's really important that we ask for what we need. And if the county can support it, great. If they can't, it's still our need. We've lived within the means of the money that's allocated for us. But to simply not have this discussion doesn't mean that we still don't need it. We definitely need something.
And we also don't know what the future Board of Commissioners is going to look like. I mean, we're going to have
That's
2 new
true.
commissioners.
And when we do have the next joint meeting with the commissioners, I think that we need to talk about the FCI score information and everything else and really talk about what this means for the county over the next 5 years, and really get an alignment between our 2 boards.
Right. Okay.
Oh, that's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Harrison?
Just move on.
Okay. So moving on